anytime I get worried about the not good, I just go to prayer.
Yeah.
Or I do say something.
Yeah,
I leak.
I was going to say,
leak.
Just pray.
Okay, I do. I leak. I'll say things, and, sometimes it's well received and sometimes
it's not.
It's not. This is a word of warning to you, nanas and grandpas. Sometimes we should probably just zip it,
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Journey We Share podcast. Today, my mom, Inez Franklin, and I are having a super cool conversation on mother-daughters, which is very ironic because we are mother-daughter
podcast.
Yes. So we just wanted to kind of go over our story and what happened in our lives. Me as a mom, you as a mom, you as a nana, and kind of encourage you, whether you are a mom or not, whether you desire to be a mom or not, or a dad, just about the journey of being a matriarch, a mother, and all of those pieces.
I love it. Yes. I had a very, very strong mom, as you know, abuelita.
Yep.
Grandma Lulu, you called her.
Yeah.
She raised 7 kids by herself. And so I feel like I can talk about motherhood much better than I can talk about fatherhood because I didn't have a father.
Yeah.
And of course I'm a mom. That also helps too. But I mean, even if I wasn't, I feel like that's more comfortable to me. And so, I'm glad that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Motherhood, the journey of being a mother-daughter podcast and
Of therefore working together.
working together, right? That's it's a lot.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I am just going to jump us into the deep end.
Okay.
Because
okay.
I think one of the coolest things is that you are such a good and present nana. Like I'm just going to go there first and just talk about that journey of you as a nana. And then we'll work our way backwards towards the younger years. Because I think that it's hard to be a really good nana or to have a good mother-daughter relationship when you become a parent yourself. It's so different. You are one way where you are the kid, solely the kid. Even if you're married, you're holding one position, and then you become a mom of your own children, and suddenly you get into, grandparenthood, and that looks so different. So, and you also came in with pre-assembled grandbabies when you became a nana. So talk to us a little bit about that experience for you.
Wow, you just sparked so many ideas. So first of all, I have a dear friend who was the one who came up with this term, pre-assembled. So we have 10 grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
And some, what we call pre-assembled, 3 of them, he came from blended marriages that our kids had. And then the other kids were born with our kids. And so we call them homegrown. So pre-assembled, homegrown. But to Jim and I, they're all our grandchildren. Yeah. We don't treat them any different one from the other. They're all our grandchildren. And, the journey of being a grandma, a nana, as the kids call me, is interesting because right from the get-go, you realize you have no control. Yeah. When it's your own kids, not only is there control, but there's responsibility. You're supposed to, take care of your kids. When you're a grandparent, you realize there's a set of parents who have that responsibility. So now you get to take a different role.
Yeah.
And so I had a name I wanted to be. I wanted to be Gigi. Because when I was 16, that was a nickname that I took for myself, and I loved it. And I thought, when I'm a grandma, I'm going to be Gigi again. But our first homegrown grandbaby said he wanted to call me Nana.
Yeah.
And so I became Nana, and I love that I'm called Nana. Yeah. For one thing, it reminds me constantly that the journey of being a grandma, it's about the grandkids. It's not something I get to control. It's something I get to enjoy.
Yeah.
And so I love the time with them. I love to see them grow. I love to see my children become parents. I love to see you as a mom. Our relationship changed.
It did.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because all of a sudden, watching you, I had the privilege of being there when your girls, each of them were born, with my daughter, Melissa, when she had her son. To be there when you become a mother is the most incredible thing to watch. And then actually watch you walk out this journey of being a mother is such a gift to be an observer of that and watch you kind of make your own decisions about what's important. Like with your kiddos, you started out, okay, we're going to be vegan. Now they're eating all kinds of
now
food.
They eat all sort of meat. Yeah.
Right? All these different decisions that parents make about their children. I get to watch how you navigate parenthood because there's no book for this, right? There's no instruction.
Yeah. Yeah. But I have to believe for so many grandparents, it's really hard because the shift is instantaneous in a lot of ways. Like all of a sudden now it feels like part of you, I'm sure. I mean, I'm not a grandparent, but like, I'm sure it feels like a part of you in some ways. And at the same time, it's like it's not, and you have to kind of release that control in such a way. And you mentioned that you also had to, I don't have control anymore over this.
Pray.
Yeah. Exactly.
All I have is prayer. And I mean, honestly, that's my one piece of advice. Pray, 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 pray. That's what you have as a grandparent. You have your own opinions and your own way that you think things should be done, or you have these fears. I'm going to speak for myself. Maybe other people don't have this, but I do. I worry about my grandkids, every single one of them. I think
all the time.
Well, when they're born, you see this beautiful baby with so much promise, almost feels like a blank canvas, right? Mm-hmm. And as they're growing, you see the innocence and all of that. I feel like I got to see the development of my grandchildren much better than I was able to see your own, my kids. Yeah. I was so busy working and raising, and that I maybe I was observing, but not to the level I feel I'm observing as a grandparent. Yeah. And again, part of it is because you're distant and you're not in control. Yeah. So what else do? You watch them grow, you watch them develop, and you see their innocence, and you want that to be forever, but they have to be in this real world. And so there's a lot of prayer. I pray for them all the time. Mm-hmm. And I pray for myself to be calm about it.
Yeah, right. I know.
I know you've told me every so often, like, Mom, okay, relax.
I know.
You gave us so much more freedom, but with the grandkids, you're more nervous. I am, because I'm so distant. I can't protect them.
Yeah. I also wonder too, it just hit me, right? Like you watched us go through every phase. Obviously you saw us from infancy to now us being our own parents. And now all of your kids are parents.
Yes.
So you have now experienced that full circle, but now your grandkids are at a wide variety of ages. You have someone about to get married and you have someone who's like just a year old. Right. So you also are rewatching like that whole journey, which is really interesting because you probably are seeing things that you're like, oh, I know how that can go,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
There's like more anxiety in that.
Exactly. And I think our oldest granddaughter is about to turn 28. And our baby is 14, 15 months. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that big span of ages. So with each grandchild, you're getting to watch a life created, and then the journey of everything from walking and teeth and, all the things, going to school. So you're doing this over and over again, especially when you have this many grandchildren. I had kids. I had 3 children. Jim had 2. We have 5. Yeah. Now we have 10 grandchildren. Yeah. That's a lot of lives that we're observing. Yeah. And so you're right. I think I can do more kind of storytelling in my mind about which direction this could go. Like I could see like, hey, this could go this direction, which could be really good, but it can go this direction, which is not good. Yeah. And anytime I get worried about the not good, I just go to prayer. Yeah. Or I do say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I leak. Just pray.
Okay, I do. I leak. I'll say things, and, sometimes it's well received and sometimes
it's not.
It's not. This is a word of warning to you, nanas and grandpas. Sometimes we should probably just zip it, Yeah. Have you ever felt like your conversations with your loved one are stale? Like you're on repeat, having the same conversations over and over again, and you're looking for a way to deepen your intimacy, to kind of bring a refreshed sense to your relationship? Well, we have created for you a PDF called Deep Conversation Starters. In it has 36 questions organized in 4 key areas of intimacy: emotional, intellectual, physical, and spiritual. And these questions allow for you to have new conversations with your loved ones. Whether it's your spouse or a friend, you will find these to be very refreshing. So you can download this free PDF for our subscribers, which is found in InesFranklin.com/Deep Conversation Starters.
I can only imagine being on the flip end of that when it's like my kids. And I'm like, wait, where are they going? I'm not ready yet.
No, it's true. And because, again, it's also, I think, something that comes with age.
Yeah.
And this world of social media and access to so much information that we just know all the stories. We know more stories. You know that one of the things I did that has been a beautiful thing, but also a little bit harmful in a way, was my work as a chaplain at a children's hospital. What an honor, truly, to serve there and be with families who are dealing with the most unthinkable grief and struggles when their baby has cancer or has a terrible illness that, just takes you to your knees.
Yeah.
And every day I went and served there, I got to see families struggle. Yeah. And I watched all kinds of stories being told and saw children who fell off the couches or fell off the bed or these injuries that are preventable. They're part of life. We get hurt.
Yeah.
But I got a little bit more nervous about my grandkids after seeing some of that.
Yeah.
I worry more about what they eat. I worry more about, if they're bouncing, jumping, and climbing. Yeah. Whereas before, remember, I was the kid who was climbing trees. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe I'm alive today.
I was going to say, in fairness, how old were you when you fell down the hillside and had to go to the hospital?
I'm going to say 7 or 8.
You were like Ryan's age.
Yeah.
You were my daughter's age. And you climbed up a mango tree and swung and fell down the hill and you gashed your head open on the side of a curb. And I swear what stuck in my head for that forever is that your mom in desperation grandma stuck your head into a bucket upside down, to drain all the blood out.
Mess.
Yeah, it's like
I made a big mess because I walked into the house and I had long hair and she saw all this blood coming down my hair. Yeah. And I mean, it's a lot when you get cut in your head. It's really quite the mess. And she did. She literally took me to the hospital upside down with my head down in the bucket. This dear friend came with a car because we didn't have a car and took us to the hospital. I don't know how I'm alive.
Because you explored, and you were definitely even one generation, obviously, above like me, above my brother who's older than me, that, your experiences are very much like even more like go out and come back when the sun sets.
Yes.
And we'll make dinner,
and it felt safer then. I wonder if it was.
I don't think it was.
I mean, I think everyone felt that they were watching over each other's kids. I think the world feels more dangerous to me now. I don't know if it's true, but it feels that way. And so I do worry about, the kids in every way. And by the way, not just in those ways, but bullies in school, right? There's so many ways in which children can get hurt. And I just want to preserve their innocence and their hearts. Yeah. And at the same time, I always tell myself, so much of who I am today, if there's something you like about me, I'm going to try to give credit to the good thing. I learned through some of the experiences that I had that were very hard. Yeah. I've had some really difficult experiences in my life. Some people label them as traumas. Maybe some of them are. Yeah. And they've formed me. And so I know that they're going to have their own hard experiences and that they will be formed by them. Yeah. Obviously, my heart is that they don't get so crushed by life that they get stuck somewhere So again, prayer, and then more prayer, and then prayer again, a lot of prayer. Yeah, that's what I do as a Nana, so that I can let you be the parent. Yeah, because I don't think if I didn't have that as a place to go, I would be hyper controlling. Yeah. It's my personality to be much more like, if God is in control of this, then I'm going to be.
Then I'm going to handle it. I got it. Don't worry about it. I'm here. I got it all.
I'll be showing up at your house going, I'm just going to sit here with the kids. Yeah. I would be a very nasty, difficult grandmother.
I love grandma. I called her, my kids called her Bita, which was like abuelita shortened, and they couldn't say abuelita, so they called her Bita. And she was amazing, but so
controlling,
intense. Yeah. And before she had dementia and Alzheimer's, and she was more like capable, she told you exactly how she felt and when she felt like that. And she did not shy away from any of the things that you'd be like, that's really taboo, Grandma, don't say that, So I feel like it was definitely one of those things where it was just also something you learned.
Yeah.
And what's cool is, as hard as it is, like, we are getting to learn from you. In that you sit there and you pray and you lean back. And I know that every single one of us really leans on you so much as a Nana, because we trust you with our kids to respect our boundaries, to respect our rules, to follow the timelines. Like, gosh, those early years, mamas, like, of just multiple schedules and you're going insane, and you always followed all of those. You said, write it down. And then you would follow all of them to a T. I mean, me and my husband got to go on our honeymoon and the kids were with you for 10 days. And that includes school functions and meetings and all of these things. And I just knew they are in the best possible hands, that if I had to go somewhere, or if I do go somewhere, I know that they're going to do all the same things. And that's a gift that I know a lot of people don't have in a grandparent, or in a parent. So it's a good word of encouragement for anyone listening today. If you are a Nana or wanting to be a Nana or whatever it is that your grandbabies call you, make sure that you're leaning onto your kids. You got to raise your kids, which is so cool. And now
they get you.
You've raised them well enough to raise their kids well.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I think sometimes you feel, I've been a mom, I know stuff. Yeah, so why wouldn't you trust me? It's like, I've been there. I've changed diapers. I have a dear friend who just has a first grandbaby, and she's changing the diapers, and her daughter is literally standing next to her watching as she's changing the diapers. She's like, I've changed a lot of diapers, I promise. Yeah. And besides, it's almost like saying, okay, if I give you a tomato or an apple and tell you to cut it, or a carrot, for example, I'm not going to tell you how to cut it. Just cut it. Cut it in pieces.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
You want fine pieces, square pieces, doesn't matter, just cut it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways to do those things. In the same way, the diaper, it's like, how wrong can you get it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But for this mother-daughter dynamic, for them, it's been a little bit of a challenge. And I think that sometimes you could feel, well, why don't you trust me? I've done this before. I actually took care of you. You're standing up and alive.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, balance that with, yes, but this is their journey of parenthood.
Yeah.
And they have their own desires, their own dreams, their own learnings that they're going through. And so I try to respect very hard. I try to respect you kids and your desires.
Yeah.
Our youngest is using cloth diapers, and you had to clip it a certain way so they wouldn't leak out.
Yeah.
And so she would give me very specific directions on how to use that. I grew up using, you guys grew up using the disposable diapers. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't used these
cloth
diapers
are
before.
A whole journey.
They're wonderful. Actually, I wish I would have used them for you guys, because they really are nice. And a little bit of laundry to do, but I do laundry every day, so who cares? But I know not everybody does that. But anyway, I try to be respectful of that. I think that's important.
Well. Yeah. And I really think you do that well. Like, I think you do respect well. But, it's so interesting because you just said something and it made me realize, so our dynamic as mother-daughter is I've always been the like kind of free floating, like, it's fine, whatever works, whatever happens, like, here's my boundary line, but outside of my boundary line, like, go wherever, it's cool. And I think that then has allowed you space truly to be the anxious one, because like, I don't feed on your anxiety in that way. Like, I can just continue to do what I do. But I wonder if for your friend and her daughter and that journey, it's almost like the opposite. Like, her daughter may be more anxious. And I did go through a phase in postpartum. And for any mamas who dealt with postpartum anxiety, depression, it is so hard. You feel so outside of your skin. You feel so uncomfortable. You feel like this being that you created and carried is suddenly like exposed to all the elements of the world. And it's so stressful and your hormones are a wreck. And so I just think that there was a season I went through that, and I really struggled. I had baby blues with my second. I had a little bit of PPD with my first. And it's interesting because in that season where I was really anxious, you then just kind of came alongside me, and you were very like, okay, it's all right. Oh, we're going to go outside now. It's going to help. I know we're going to go for a walk. Right. So like, you just kind of, you and I have been able to really balance well. And I think a lot of that has to do with empathy and compassion for one another, that wherever
respect.
Yeah.
Right. A desire to care for one another.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we have a good relationship. Here I'm doing a podcast, right? And working together and all that. I know that's not the case for everybody.
For a lot of mamas.
I'm very grateful to have a good relationship with all of my kids,
Yeah.
which is, I know it's a blessing.
Yeah.
But it does require a posture of, humility for sure, but also a willingness to really listen to what the other person needs and not just bring your agenda to every single time that we're together.
Yeah.
Like pausing. And sometimes I have to be like corrected. So when you would have been in high school, Melissa was middle school, I
she was
think.
in middle school.
Is when Jim and I suddenly became grandparents because our oldest got married and her husband came with 2 kids. Now they were 7 and 5, I think, or 6 and 4, somewhere around there. Yeah. So they were a little older, but they were still little. And we weren't like, oh my goodness, I still have a high schooler, but I'm also a grandmother. And so I didn't know how to do it. And then came their first child together, and I still wasn't playing. And she had to come and sit me down and say, hey, this is probably my dad's only grandchild. You've got to jump in. Now, it's not because they have other kids, but at the time, it was, her thought was, you got to step up. You got to become a grandparent. And I realized that I still have a high schooler. I don't know how to do both things.
Yeah.
But I listened. Yeah. I'm glad I listened because I feel like I was blessed by listening. Yeah. Because I learned to be a nana through that. And not just to him, but also to the kids who are already older. Yeah. And then, of course, that has benefited the relationship I have with all the other grandkids. Yeah. If she had not challenged me and had the courage to say, you need to jump in, who knows when I would have woken up to it, and I would have missed so much. I mean, my grandson and I used to go outside and spend an hour and a half blowing bubbles. Yeah. And that's because I said, I'm just going to be a grandma. I'm just going to sit with him and whatever he wants to do. And we would go and play and pretend and do all kinds of fun things because I decided I still have a high schooler, but I'm going to play with this child from the sense of being a grandparent, which I didn't get to do with the older kids, but we have a really good relationship
they
now.
They still see you as Nana.
We have a great relationship, but I did get to work through because I was challenged. And sometimes we have to be willing to be challenged.
Yeah. And I think that's really hard, especially when the challenge comes from a younger generation, right? I think there's like this mental block of like, exactly like you were saying earlier, like I've done life. I've been here. What are we doing? But I think that when you look at the flip end, the blessing that comes with leading with curiosity, which is one of your favorite things to say in relationships, is really helpful because it's like, okay, well, where are you coming at it from here? And I think you have really ingrained that so well in our heads that now as adults with our own children, I often do the same thing back to you, which I think is the gift you and I have of working together that we can do really well is we can have hard conversations. We can talk about things that are challenging. It's not like every single conversation is like easy breezy, beautiful cover girl, right? Like there's journeys. That's right. But we also are so willing to like both have a conversation about it, both chat about it, and be clear with each other about it. Yeah. And it's made a huge difference. Like when you express anxiety about when I let Ryan go out and play and like, and what that looks like, you and I can have a really honest dialogue about why am I doing that? Why did I make that decision? What am I trying to do for her? How am I helping her do that? And I think that it ultimately leads to a place where you're not wanting to run to the house and keep her locked inside because you're like, okay, I see where my daughter's going. I know why she's making these decisions, and I'm going back to that prayer, Yeah,
that's true. That's right. Go to prayer and say, that is a good thing. Independence is a good and important thing. Yeah. As you were sharing, I was thinking about something you and I do as we work together, is to remind ourselves what posture are we coming into the conversation in? Yeah. And so, since we work together, sometimes I'm the boss, right? You're the employee. But I'm the mom and you're the daughter. So those are power dynamics, right? You've got a boss, employee, a parent-child relationship, but you're an adult.
Yeah.
And so it's so important that I don't forget that you're an adult. I'm not talking to my little 2-year-old anymore, right? I'm talking to a 30-something-year-old woman who has a lot of wisdom to share with me. And so every so often we have to tell each other, I have to say, okay, I'm wearing the mom hat now, or I'm wearing the boss hat now. And then sometimes you've got to remind me like, hey, we're partners.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Because then there's other places where we're like meeting each other halfway. Like on this podcast, we are coming in together versus when I'm the director of operations at Trochia and you are head honcho, right? So like, even though we work collaboratively, and if there's something that's really heavy on me and I'm like, no, I don't think we should do X, Y, Z, we lean on each other, but there is definitely a point where you're like, nope, we're doing this. And that's it, you know? And there has to be a willingness for you and I both to like push shift and pull, shift that communication, be okay, not take it personal. Like we've worked really, really hard. Okay. I'm not gonna say this was perfect. And I'm sure it won't always be perfect, but we've worked really, really hard to not personalize. Anytime that we're having this hard conversation, we're willing to go there, dialogue about it, and get through it, which I think is huge.
Yeah. And, it's not always been easy. And I just want to be sure as we share this, that people aren't listening going, you guys are so perfect. How
we
nice.
Are not.
Yeah. We are not. We've gotten it wrong. You know, we've had those tough conversations or calls where we end, we go, oh, that was tough, you know, or can this work? And so, this is a journey. And I think the important thing, if anything, as I'm listening to us talk, a lot has to do with a posture of the heart, you know, and kind of like how we value the other person as an image bearer, as an individual whose thoughts matter, whose dreams matter, you know, and we respect each other, knowing that we can always learn from one another. Yeah. I mean, I've learned so much from you and from every one of my kids and the grandkids. They're always teaching me stuff. Yeah. And I love learning. Yeah. So to me, I think, okay, what am I going to learn from them now in this situation? So I try to have that posture, which again, sometimes it isn't easy. And that's where, anytime it gets hard, I go to prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I totally get that. I feel like I take a lot of that on, both the like leading with curiosity. I do that with my 5 and 7-year-old, you know, like they are teaching me so much every single day about how they think and process how things are happening at their school. And me and my husband had our therapist say the best time, and what they found in studies, is time around the dinner table. Yeah. That if in every possible situation, if you can have dinner together as a family, you will make a humongous difference in the course of the relationship with your kid, because then they're going to get to high school and they're going to always know that they can come back to that dinner table and talk to you honestly. And that's not the time to, get in trouble. That's not the time to set a ton of rules. That's the time to just catch up. And so we implemented that. I mean, we already did dinner, but we like really implemented intentional time, highs and lows, like all these sort of things. And our kids come to us about every little drama and story in their day. My 7-year-old expressed to me when she was having a problem with her friend, and we worked through some solutions, and then she went and tried those solutions. She had a harder time with it. And so she actually even came to the point where she's like, hey, I want you to talk to this friend's mom because I really love this friend, but I can't show up like this when my friend's behaving like this. It's hurting my feelings. And she was so crystal clear about what she needed. And I was like, okay, sure. Like you tried, we worked on things together. We learned how to communicate. It didn't work. So we're going to go do this. Now mom's going to help. Yeah. And we'll kind of work through what that looks like. But like, that is not something that I take lightly, that my 7-year-old feels so open and willing to have those hard conversations with me and to ask me for help in a way that's healthy, And I do feel like a lot of that is honestly how you raised us to see things. I also think it has been lots and lots of therapy for myself and for even my kids have been in therapy, both of them. My younger one still is, but like my older one went to therapy, and it really helped her learn how to communicate what she needs and how to process through what she needs. And I feel like it made a huge difference.
Well, and, I haven't done a lot of therapy in my life, but if there's one thing I feel therapy does, is it helps you learn to talk about things. Yeah. And to find what's appropriate to share in a close setting, what's appropriate to share beyond that, and how to do it. And I feel like communication is so important. Yeah. And I know so many people who have difficult time communicating with their mother, or their daughters, in both directions. Yeah. And it does break my heart. But I do believe that we have a loving God who can heal, and he can do anything. He can do anything. He can do the most surprising thing. And at minimum, even if you can't make it what you wish it were, and there is a grief associated with, okay, I can never have that with my daughter or with my mom. That's not possible. But maybe there's some things that are possible that you just haven't opened yourself to that possibility.
Totally.
Right? That there's some things that with the help of God, you can accomplish or kind of move towards.
Yeah.
Not to completely give up. You know, in the Bible, when you and I were talking about doing this podcast, we realized that, wow, there is no story.
I know.
There's no mother-daughter
Just
story.
straight mother-daughter.
In the Bible to help us with this.
No.
You know, there's a lot of father-son, very patriarchal and important things, don't get me wrong. And I think we can learn from the patriarchs about the journey of parenthood, child. You know, in fact, I'm actually reading right now in my Bible study the story of David and his sons. And, well, I won't tell the whole story, but the whole point is, as I'm listening to the podcast, I listen to it when I go on my walk to the Bible app, I'm seeing a lot of dynamics of parent-child dynamics and adult-child dynamics, all that stuff. So we can learn from the guys. But man, the only story, I just open it up to the Bible, the only story we have of sort of a mother-daughter is Ruth and Naomi.
Yeah. Who were like mother-in-law, daughter-in-law.
Yeah, they're not, exactly. They're not even mother-daughter. My goodness, folks, if you know a story, and I'll go search it afterwards, of in the Bible that I missed, please tell us. Email us at hello@trokia.org. Because I couldn't find it.
But the only one we could find that was like somewhat parent-child was when Jesus is talking to Mary.
His mom.
But both times he like talks to her, he's like, woman? Like he's so hard with her. I was like, dang it. Like there's really Naomi and Ruth
today. Okay, in all fairness to Jesus.
I mean, Jesus is perfect. You can't exactly, you're not mad at it. But I was
that sounds very harsh to call her a woman, but there was the whole point behind that. It's not a bad thing. But let's go back to Ruth. So Ruth and Naomi. So here's what I love about the story of Ruth and Naomi that I feel like we can point to, and that is Ruth, who was not a Jewish woman, right? She was a Moabite, not from the people of Israel, married a Jewish man from Israel, Naomi's son, and then when he dies, Ruth decides not to go back to her family, which would have been customary, but to stay with her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And the reason she says she does that is because she wants to follow the God that Naomi follows. Which, when you read this story, it's pretty fascinating because Naomi's husband dies. Naomi's two sons dies. And now she's going back to her land, and Ruth is able to see still in the tragedy of this woman's life, the God that she follows.
Yeah.
And she says, I want to just read this line. Because, Naomi's telling her, go back to your family. Don't follow me. I'm an old woman who's lost everything. What do I have to offer you? Which would have been really difficult. But here's what Ruth says. Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Your God will be my God.
Yeah.
You've gone through so much, and yet she could probably see in Naomi a love for her God that she wanted.
Yeah.
And I think that going back to what you and I have been talking about, the importance of just having God at the center of our relationship, I think is one of the reasons why you and I can go through whatever we're going through, ups and downs, and be able to build a relationship that's strong.
Yes. I do think God plays a humongous role. I think also what you see in the story of Ruth and Naomi, which is beautiful, is like just such a deep respect. Ruth really leans on Naomi and trusts her.
True.
She really does see that Naomi knows well. And so she says, I will follow you. I will be led by you. And it leads to such a beautiful story, right? Like it leads to Ruth being part of Jesus's lineage because she respected Naomi's direction. And I think that...
And by the way, when you read some of the direction, you think, Naomi,
Yeah.
what? You're telling her to do what? But Ruth does it. She does.
She does without question. I don't think there's a point in the story where, at least, where she's like, I don't know, this is such a great idea, which I think requires such a statement on the daughter as humility, right? Of like, I don't know everything. That's the reality. And so like, I can, as a daughter, set healthy boundaries of like, I'm going to do this because this feels what's best for me. This is what I've done. But there's also like a respect. If you were to come to me and say like, hey, I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z, I also love you and want to honor you in a point of like, okay, let's talk about it, you know? And I'm not just going to go out there and like make, like you and I working together is a good example. I think it's what works really well for you and I. And by the way, you guys, this is a very unique me and my mother conversation, because the reality is there's multiple kids in this family, including my sister, who I'm very close with. I don't know that there's anybody else that could be working alongside you and you guys could like really manage it, because I think all of our personalities are very different. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's also a part of like my personality and your personality and why you and I are able to kind of do this kind of push and pull in different seasons and stations of our life together, you know? And so anyways, just going back to this, it's like, there is such a respect and humility of like, if something's difficult and challenging, like I can sit down and talk with you about it and we can go there and I lean back and I listen in and vice versa with you. And so we can always kind of, we mutually submit in some ways. Yes, and I also am willing to submit in other ways, even still, as an adult, as an independent person, as a mom myself, I still submit.
Yeah, that doesn't make you a child.
No,
right? We can try. It doesn't make me any less of a mother if I believe and trust in what you're saying. Yeah. You know, Naomi knew her people. She knew what would work as far as Ruth's future being secured. And so Ruth trusted Naomi with how things worked in the land of Israel. Yeah. She was a Moabite. She didn't know how the things work there. Yeah. And so, there's a sense of like, hey, we're now in a territory that you know more, so I'm going to trust you. Yeah. And sometimes you're in a territory that you know more, so I trust you. So it's a trust, mutual trust and respect. Totally. Which is important.
I also think, something interesting about Ruth and Naomi's story that is different, but reminds me very much of like our story, both of ours in different seasons, is Naomi and Ruth, Naomi lost her sons, right? But Ruth lost her husband. Yes. So she experienced this big loss where she was suddenly on her own. And for those of you who don't know, I was a single mom for 2.5 years. You were a single mom. So we experienced, even though we didn't experience it through like physically losing through death, we still lost that partnership and that consistency, and did that with children in tow. Yeah. And I went through it where I not only lost that partnership, I also ultimately like lost any sort of help in that realm. And my kids ended up with just me all the time. Yeah. They just had to, and there was quite a few times in between there, then and my now husband being present all the time, that they did just only have me. Yeah. And that's so hard because you have no one to bounce ideas off. You have no one to like lean on and ask questions of. It was actually way more challenging than I anticipated, and suddenly not knowing where my footing was as a mom. And my kids were young when it happened, at 18 months and 3. So, I mean, they were still babies. My 18-month-old still slept in a pack and play in my closet. You know what I mean? Like, she still slept like outside of a different room. She was so close to me. And so just having that like loss of someone to bounce ideas, to ask questions, to know where to go. I'm sure there are moms who are listening to this who were single moms, who maybe are, who were. It's so challenging, and those seasons look really, really different. And having you in that season was instrumental for me. Having someone that I could lean on, and I didn't just lean on you. I leaned on you, but I also leaned on my pastor. I went to other women of faith and really like had to ask for help in those places. My sister, she's younger than me. She wasn't a mom yet, but she's a therapist, and I fully trusted her opinion. I'd be like, I don't know what to do here, and she would honestly walk me through so many things because I was so lost.
I think it's important to if you don't have a good relationship with your mom, to seek out a woman that you feel is ahead of you, older, maybe a mom herself, that can be a mentor or support to you. There's so many women who love to do that.
Yeah.
And so, you got to look for them, and you have to put yourself out there a little at risk and say, hey, I'm over here by myself and I need support. Would you be willing to help me? Maybe at least just talk about something I'm working through. But shout out to all the single moms out there who are trying to do it on their own. But remember, you don't have to do it on your own.
No.
Because there are women, sometimes it's even a woman who's never had children, but wants to walk alongside with you and maybe experience motherhood with you. So, or through you, I guess. But don't do it alone. Absolutely don't do it alone. And this is the beauty of the story here, right? You have Ruth is alone, right? Naomi's alone, but they're together. And that makes all the difference.
And then that continues through the story where it's like by the end of the story, Ruth goes on to get remarried, basically, but she doesn't abandon Naomi in that story, right? So that trust they had built kind of continues to grow, which is so beautiful. And so I think that, it just really reminded me of that phase of my life. But even before that phase, like, I just feel like I had a really hard time, between, I have multiple chronic illnesses. So my pregnancies were challenging. And so my body really struggled. And then after my body struggled, my emotions and hormones struggled. And then I went through the separation and divorce. And so then my emotions struggled again. And I just feel like it was a really hard season. And so it really struck me that I wanted to give you all, the listeners, a prompt today where you can write a letter to yourself in the trenches. Now, maybe you've not experienced the trenches yet. Maybe you're not a mom. Maybe you are not able to get pregnant, or you're trying, or you're not ready yet. But one day, if you end up becoming a mom, you'll be in the trenches. And so if you are in that season, I want you to still write that letter. If you are past that season, I want you to look at that season with all of the compassion and grace that you deserved in that season. I want you to really just give yourself a moment and really look at that and say, oh man, younger me really was going through it, and write a letter to yourself. If you're in the trenches, now is the time. Write a letter to yourself of encouragement and equipping yourself, because these seasons do not last forever, but when you are in them, it is so hard. And I know that there are multiple seasons in my life that I don't know truly for myself that I could have gotten through it without God, without like prayer and petition, or without you. I mean, I feel very blessed that you and I have such a beautiful relationship, that you've always walked and guided and kind of been alongside me through the good and the bad, through the seasons where I said, I don't know about God, to the season of today where, that's the first place I turn. I feel like you've always kind of walked hand in hand. So take that moment today and write that letter to yourself in that season so you can process through it.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we are so excited that you guys are here and a part of this podcast. We are having the best time having all of these conversations, but we don't want it to just stop here. First off, I need you to make sure that you are liking, subscribing, hitting the bell so you don't miss any of our podcast episodes. But on top of that, we want to continue the conversation. So you can email us at hello@trochia.org, because we would love to just continue this conversation. Don't think like you have to do it alone. We would love to hear about what's going on in your life, and maybe a story that you have with your mom or your kids that you are as a mom, just so we can all celebrate or cry together.
It's true.
Yes. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again on the next one.